with their own firearms. And having shown up to those home invasions with a body in the doorway, stepping over the body and getting with the homeowner, who was obviously shook up but alive because they were able to stop the armed subject from coming in their home with their own personal firearm 2 to 3 minutes before I even got there. If that person has to be restricted more because some people can't be responsible with their rights by smart guns, by laws dictating how guns should be stored, that kind of stuff, where the guy breaking into the house, because by the very nature of who he is, isn't paying attention to any laws anyway, especially the number one law, murder. What gun law is going to keep that guy from kicking the door down?
Well, let me say a couple of things, because this is something that, has been talked about quite a bit. But before I say what I'm going to say, I want to point out or remind everyone of a family. Their names were the Hendersons. The Hendersons lived in Kansas City. They were the family that Truman Capote wrote the book about in Cold Blood. And these people were, all the four of them, the mother, the father, the two children, a boy and a girl, were all heavily armed. They were, they had many, many rifles and, weaponry. They were all highly skilled. They were all, very, very confident and comfortable, and had to be because they lived, in a really remote area. And yet, the killer got in and took him by surprise. So it's always the element, of course, killed all of them, tragically in the end. None of them ever got to their gun. And the point is, that the element of surprise always defeats the gun carrier. Most of the break-ins.
Okay, so let's expand on that. So since the element, hold on, let me expand on that. Let me expand on that, because it could happen to me too. I have guns. I have some strategically placed and safely stored in case I need to get to them quickly instead of being in the other part of the house. Because I can't 100% of the time defend myself, then I should just disarm and take the path that's already ordained for me, because since he could get the drop on me, so why should I even own a gun? Is that kind of where you're going with that?
No, not at all. The Supreme Court has said that every citizen can have a gun at home for self-defense. I've not said, nor do I, argue that you shouldn't. I could cite you all the statistics that a gun in the home, is more likely to hurt the gun owner than it is a perpetrator. There's been study after study. But hey, it's America, and if you want to have a gun at home, do it, have it.
Then why did you use that as an example to answer my question then?
Well, I used it to point out that the place you went to that took you 5 minutes to get to, going at code 3 as fast as you can, was able to defend themselves, or wasn't. I guess there was a body on the floor. I don't know if it was the body of the criminal or the body of the
criminal. The homeowner successfully defended themselves.
Okay. So the homeowner defended themselves because they surprised the criminal. And I have no problem with that. I absolutely no problem with that. If the criminal had surprised the homeowner couldn't have defended themselves. Absolutely. Couldn't have defended themselves. So I have no problem with somebody, I just point out that carrying a gun, and this is one of the big, debates going on right now, people want to carry guns in public and walk around with them. And I'm really opposed to that. And for the main reason that, carrying a gun, if carrying a gun gave you self-defense, then no police officers would ever get, shot by, by strangers.
So
no.
So back to my original.
Carrying a gun outside your home is something we should allow.
So, because crimes against individuals can't happen outside the home?
Crimes can happen, but
so outside the home, then I can't defend myself, but inside the home, I can.
Well,
or don't have the opportunity to defend myself.
I would argue that carrying a gun outside offers virtually no self-defense. I would make that argument very strongly. And we're doing something now. We're doing a very significant study to show, that is the case. A couple of times, you'll find this interesting, Mike, a couple of times I have challenged the NRA, the Illinois Rifle Association, which is the NRA's, group out here. And I said, look, you think carrying a gun outside provides self-defense? We don't. But why argue? Let's set up a test, and we'll both agree, as to whether it's a fair test or not. So we'll both set up a test. We will set up a test together, and let's make it interesting. Let's put $50,000 on the line, and whoever is right, if the people can defend themselves, you'll get the $50,000, and I'll pay for the test. And if I'm right, you'll pay me $50,000, and you'll pay for the test.
So if somebody carrying a firearm can't 100% of the time defend themselves, they shouldn't be allowed to carry it all.
The problem is with people carrying guns in public, the public is put at risk. And since there's virtually no chance of you defending yourself with the gun, you shouldn't be carrying it because you're putting the public at risk.
So if I'm carrying, if I were to carry a gun, well, first of all, when I carry, you won't know it, and I won't tell you, because I don't want to cause alarm. I don't want to draw attention myself. And everybody knows how I feel about the open carry guys. To me, as a gun owner, put your gun in the case until you're ready to use it. It's not jewelry. I don't stand with those guys. I don't agree with their method. I agree with their passion and their goal. I don't agree with their method at all. So, if I'm outside my home and I have my firearm, which is, like I said, I carry it concealed. I don't have it out for everybody to see. Even when I was a police officer, you'd never see my firearm. Since I can't defend myself 100% of the time, and because just by the fact that I'm carrying the gun, somehow, even though I have no intention of harming anybody unless they're trying to harm me, of shooting anybody, I should not be allowed to carry it outside my home.
There are many ways you can defend yourself that don't require a gun. But I submit to you that you're carrying your gun concealed if you are taken by surprise, which you always will be. It's always going to be the case that you're going to be surprised, by the other side, by the criminal, and you're not going to be able to defend yourself. It's just a fantasy.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen. And I don't want to be, I'm sure we're all familiar with the horrible thing about the 2-year-old kid, getting into his mother's purse and shooting the gun, in the store and killing her. What a horror that is.
And it was a tragic accident. Yes. And again, that was because
the gun might have missed and killed me if I was there.
Okay.
I don't want to play. I don't want to have to take that risk.
And that was totally the mother's mother's responsibility. Mike's got a question for you, Mr. Fineman.
So, okay, sure.
Let's back this up here. I'm actually a bow hunter. I, have a bow. So, what is to say I can, since I'm not legally allowed to go and take my firearm with me, that I cannot take my bow? Even though most engagements with a firearm, especially out in the open, occur between 5 and 15 yards away. With my bow, I can hit a deer, which is out here in Texas, smaller than a person, at about 45 yards. So what's not to say that I am safer carrying a firearm instead of carrying my bow around to prevent myself from being in harm's way?
Well, tell me give me a scenario of how you will, of how you walking around outside carrying a gun would defend yourselves. Tell me how it happens.
I'm actually...
If you were unable to defend yourself with a gun, then why do we give them...
tell me how. You're walking down
Oh, hold on. Let me finish the question, sir. Let me finish the question. We've been having a great conversation here. If I am physically unable 100% of the time ever to be able to defend myself with a gun, then why do we arm our police officers if they're just going out there to get shot?
Well, in England, they don't. And there's some very interesting statistics, because I did a 20-year study about police officers.
But here in America, we do. Why even give our cops guns then if basically they're good for nothing because they're not ever going to be able to defend themselves?
We should be allowed to carry my bow everywhere. With my bow.
I don't know the regulations for bows, so, but I can tell you this, that if somebody was coming at you by surprise, I doubt that you'd get your bow loaded quick enough to deal with them. But I really don't know the regulation. But this is a really important point, okay? In the years 1992 to 2012, and we did all the research to do this study. From 1992 to 2012, there were 40 police officers killed in England, and 10 of them were killed by guns. Okay, so there were 10 that were killed by guns. In the same period here, there were 1,700 police officers killed, of which 1,500, or I think it was 1,400, I don't have the figure in front of me, were killed by guns. Now, we're 5 times England's size, okay? So we should have expected to have 50 police officers killed by guns. They've got 60 million, we've got 300 million. So we should have expected 50. We had over 1,300. So I submit to you that carrying the gun, or let me step back for a second. I submit to you that people carrying guns make the environment less safe, much less safe than if people are not walking around with guns.
Okay.
And we know that the police and the police officers in England don't have guns.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back after these messages live on the Ring Central Celebrity Hotline. We're talking to Mr. Eliot Fineman of the National Gun Victims Action Council. I'm Mike Allen. This is the Armed Radio Global Network, and you are on the air.
Hi, now I know you hear Joe Rocks on their weekly restaurant reviews on Night Talk, 10 p.m. Eastern. And boy, these two like to eat. Right, boys? Well, here's something to review right from your house. Eat24. That's right, eat24.com. With over 25,000 restaurants for you to choose from when you're hungry. Many in your area. So review that, boys. Eat24.com. Click, order, and eat. Eat24.com.
Who's the candy man? Why, Brian Smiley, of course. Brian Smiley Candy Company. There you'll find aisles and aisles of every candy imaginable. Brian Smiley Candy Company is located at 35 Industrial Parkway in Woburn, Massachusetts. They're open Monday through Friday from 8 to 4:30 p.m. or call them at 781-935-1660. Brian Smiley is the candy man.
Is your wife wicked hot? Or is she just cold? Do you just want to take a hot shower? Call Savino Mechanical for all your heating, hot water, and cooling needs. Savino Mechanical has been servicing Greater Boston and Southern New Hampshire for over a quarter century. Quality 24-hour service, reasonable rates, satisfaction guaranteed, licensed and insured. And remember, at Savino Mechanical, we are not comfortable until you are. Call Savino Mechanical today at 1-855-624-4280. That's 1-855-624-4280. Savino Mechanical.
Yeah, if you go and look
All right, here we are back on the air. Tonight's broadcast brought to you by Ring Central, who has our number. Write it down, 866-225-5401. Phone lines are open. We're on the air with Mr. Eliot Fineman, who is the CEO of the National Gun Victims Action Council, and we're heading into the break. Had to pay some bills, but now we're back. Now, here's the question I guess I keep asking you, Mr. Fineman, and I've yet to get an answer. Do you contend, then, since we